Alright everyone, it's time for some linguistic propaganda courtesy of the New York Slimes, New York Times, one of the head fake newspapers in the country. It's funny because the New York Times at this point is basically a website. Like, who fucking reads newspapers anymore? Most of the time people get newspapers and they shred it apart and they use it for bedding for their parakeets or something like that. They let their rabbits take a big fucking shit on it and then they roll it up, because that's what the New York Times is good for cleaning up bullshit, basically, because it is bullshit. Like seeks like. It's just the nature of the world. Anyway, I've got the tab open here because I'm going to have to read the titles verbatim, obviously, for you. The New York Times, in the wake of the Dayton shooting, released a story on Trump's response. The initial title was "Trump Urges Unity versus Racism," which is what he did in the most explicit sense. Whether you think he's being genuine or not, what he was urging was unity. We got to come together and stop the fighting and stuff. We need bipartisan support to solve things. That's a message of unity. Whether you want to admit it or not, and whether you think that it's genuine or not, means nothing. The message itself, if that's what you're reporting on in his speech, was unity, as opposed to racism and violence and things like that. Then they decided to change it. So what happened was they got dogpiled by a bunch of far leftists, like pink-haired Starbucks swillers showed up, I guess, to protest and say, "Oh my goodness, how can you say this? Trump is an evil racist. He's a very hateful man." So they changed the title under pressure, and this is like 1984 memory-holing bullshit. They changed it to "Assailing Hate But Not Guns." That's very, very interesting. So, in other words, the actual message of Trump was giving is meaningless now. That was the initial basic premise of the reporting. Here's his response. Now the response no longer itself actually matters in sum and substance. The only thing that matters in the actual story's headline now, and this is a lie by structure, I'll get into that, I've mentioned it before, is the fact that he didn't say, "Well, guns are bad. Oh my God, we need to ban guns. If only we banned guns, there wouldn't be so many problems in the country. If only we became disarmed and said fuck the Constitution and the rule of law and shit and ignored the Constitution entirely and pretended the Second Amendment didn't exist. If only we could pretend it didn't exist like we often do the Fourth Amendment, things would be magically better in the United States." The fact that he didn't do that and then get down and grovel at the feet of a Stalin statue, I guess, pissed some people off. So, no, it's not a unifying message because he didn't say metallic instrument bad, basically, is what it boils down to. Now, this is called lie by structure. The article itself, in substance, doesn't change, but the tagline changes. Why? A lot of people will look at the title of an article and maybe the two-sentence blurb after that they see on Google or Bing or whatever on their news page. That's all that they see. They don't read the article. This is called lie by structure. Here's what you do. Let's say that I've got a report on something good that Bernie Sanders does. Let's say that I'm writing an article. I'm from Breitbart or Drudge or something. I don't like Bernie Sanders. I think he's evil. I will make a title that is technically not misleading, but omits the full truth. It's a half-true title by structure. Like, let's say that Bernie Sanders jumps into a burning building and saves a bunch of orphans. I will do it. I won't really mention. I'll say Bernie Sanders braves death or something like this, something more generic that's more vacuous. Then I'll do a two-sentence blurb. I'll omit the fact that he's saved a bunch of orphans and puppies or whatever, and I'll just say Bernie Sanders showed grit yesterday when he dashed into a burning building in order to aid in fire rescue efforts, or something like that. So that, I'm burying the fact that he actually was being truly heroic and saving lives, and I'm just focusing on the fact that he's got grit in the tagline. 90% of the people that encounter my article won't go further than this. They've got no idea he saved puppies. They have no idea that he carried out 5 orphans on his back while rambling to them about how Santa was real and that's why he's a socialist. They don't know. And so when you confront people, the problem is that reality that I've spun for them is what gets ingrained in their head. The rest of the article they don't absorb, so it's not part of their truth. If then someone says, "Well, Bernie Sanders is so great, he saves orphans and stuff," "Oh, yeah, you're exaggerating." That's what you do. You lie by omission. I'm not technically lying. Buried at the bottom of that article after 5 paragraphs of nonsense nobody gives a fucking shit about and won't read through, it says, "Oh, by the way, he carried off some orphans. He saved their lives." That's a lie by structure. Lie by omission is that you're not even structuring it, that you're just omitting it entirely. So the title of this article has been changed deliberately to be misleading for political reasons under political pressure. Now, the New York Times didn't even decide to do that. They had to be pressured in order to do that. Other people came in. This is what you see in the deplatforming witch hunt fucking satanic panic 2.0 bullshit of today, which is that normally it's not even the corporation causing a problem, it's them doing it under pressure. Google itself doesn't want to censor jack shit. It wants all the independent content creators to make all of the independent content on YouTube and on Google services. They want it because they make money off of it. The problem is when people spawn an outrage mob and start going after advertisers, it declines their money. So they have no choice but to address the problem with more censorship. This is, by the way, how these big tech firms will inevitably die, because the outrage mob doesn't stop being outraged because you give in once. You say, well, it's common sense. We've seen this. It's a slow march into stupidity. At first it was manifest observable behavior. We're banning a couple people because of real life problems caused by their real-life behavior. The fact that they post weird shit online doesn't matter to us at all, but we're deplatforming them because of their real-world bullshit. Then it was financial. Then it was the possibility of causing real-world bullshit. Then it was spawning harmful opinions. Then it was off-site behavior, and that's in a million different things. It's going to keep growing until eventually there won't be independent content creation, at least on lamestream sites. They'll go after all tech too. They'll go after the financial structure. They'll go after investing. They'll go after advertising. It will spiral out of control, and eventually you'll see the internet as we know it today will become like terrestrial radio, and you'll have like a satellite-style alternative. That's really the fundamental thing that'll happen. Eventually someone will create essentially what amounts to a second internet separate from the first, that will begin to amalgamate people that create content from the mainline internet. They'll advertise on radio and TV and even on the old-style internet itself, and it'll replace it. By and large, for anyone who wants edgy, interesting, entertaining material, they'll be using a totally second internet that'll be totally not based on the structure of the first. That's what'll happen. And by the way, when that happens, I want to be one of the first people to be there. You can count on it. It'll work. It's happened before. It'll happen again. But anyway, it's propaganda. This is meant to addle the minds of the New York Times audience. I have no doubt that it was a small group of intelligent leftists who realized that again, most people will only read the title and the blurb right after it. So if they say, well, Trump is urging unity, that might break the one-dimensionality spell of the propaganda that's been woven around Trump. He's got to be one-dimensional. He's got to be orange. He's got to be fat. He's got to take a shit and smear it on prostitutes' tits. He's got to do terrible things. He's got to hate children. He's got to hate his wife, probably hit her. He's got to rape his daughter. He hates animals. He hates black people. He hates brown people. He hates... Now, basically anyone. He's out of touch, but he's also very cunning and psychopathic and wants to destroy the world. He's got to be one-dimensional. He's got to be the ultimate arch-villain, otherwise the propaganda stops working. So they can't have this, oh my goodness, you're saying Trump is urging unity. No, you fucking change that to he's not urging people to get rid of guns because guns bad. Make it partisan. That way the one-dimensionality continues. That's basically what they've done. But yeah, so there's some linguistic propaganda with the New York Times. The New York Slimes bending over backwards, sucking itself off at the behest of a bunch of pink-haired freaks. That's about all. Peace out.